Hello and welcome to this week's Property Matters. It's the first show of 2020. A happy new year to all. And you can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or by email at hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Your host today is myself, Carol Tallon. Brian Fox is away today, but he will be joining us over the next few weeks. And we've an exciting lineup ahead for our very first show of the decade. Up first and in studio with me today is Barry Cull, Head of Homes in South Dublin for AIB. Barry, we're delighted you were able to join us in studio today. So, a new year, a new decade, homes in South Dublin. Where do we start?
Yeah, and thanks for having me on, Carol. I suppose, it's that time of year, I think, where people start to consider maybe whether it's a move or potentially getting on the property ladder, because I think there's conversations had over Christmas and big decisions made. So
that's always the way. The new year is a great time for the property market, and sometimes it isn't recognised as that, but I actually always think that big decisions are made between Christmas and New Year.
Absolutely.
They might not be acted on, but they're made.
Yeah, I think the ball is started rolling, I suppose, early in January, and as you say, people might not actually get into a new home or get involved in the bidding process until February or March, but decision is made, and now's the point from our perspective that we're seeing a lot of customers coming in looking to see what could they buy, what's available, how much could they qualify for, and all the typical first-time buyer and mover questions.
Okay, well, look, let's start right at the beginning. So decision is made, people are looking for a new home, whether it's a first-time buyer or maybe somebody who is looking to trade up or down. So from a mortgage point of view, what's the first step they should be taking?
I think the obvious one is come in and talk to somebody, because I think that there's a huge amount of information out there, but it's still the best thing is to sit down and talk to an expert. So I think that one of the things that we've seen in the market actually and in our customers' behaviour is they want different options. So they want to be able to talk to us online, they want to be able to talk to us face to face, or to meet us outside of our working hours, so we're able to facilitate all of those.
Okay.
But what it means for the customer is they get in, they get some sense early on of what's their budget, so how much could they qualify for, what's realistic for them, and from our perspective then it gives us an idea as to what type of a home they may be looking for, and how we could help and support them as well. So
Barry, how long have you been working in mortgages?
So working in mortgages about 15 years.
Okay, so you were there pre-crash?
I was there pre-crash, during crash, and out the other side as well.
Out the other side.
Yeah.
So actually, this is something I'm always interested in. It's something I ask estate agents about as well. You know, it's consumer behaviour. I'm interested when consumers come into you inquiring about a mortgage, you know, compared to maybe the consumers of 15 years ago, how informed are they?
I actually think they're much better informed, and I suppose the fact that there's access to so much information online now has made a real difference. So I also think, Carol, the days of somebody coming in almost cap in hand are probably gone, thankfully, because I think you have an educated customer base, we have customers coming in, they have a certain amount of knowledge, and they've some sense of what they want, which is definitely a change. The best example I would give is most of our customers know that they can get 3.5 times the income, but they're also aware of the central bank limits and how could they get an exception. So the type of questions we get asked are much more detailed than they might have been 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah,
you know, it's interesting, you know, sometimes applying for a mortgage can be a bit like a marathon, and you don't want to turn up on the day unprepared. So I think one of the things I've seen, particularly from a first-time buyer perspective, is that first-time buyers are terribly well prepared. You know, as in they're not deciding to get a mortgage. They're spending 6 months training, getting their finances fit before they make that application.
And one of the things we love to see is someone coming in and saying, don't think I'm ready right now, but what can I do to get ready? And that's great. That's a great conversation for us to have, because we'll sit you down and talk through maybe simple things like making sure you get your savings up to scratch. And one important thing I think, particularly for her first-time buyers, is to bear in mind that when we're looking and assessing a customer's affordability, we're looking at the behaviour on their bank statements. So it's making sure that in the months leading up to application, that they actually have really good bank statements, that you can see evidence of saving, that it's kind of clear, they've avoided referral charges or anything like that. So we get a lot of customers that will come in looking for that sort of a steer, and that we're able to keep with them on the journey then over the next 6 months or a year.
Okay, in terms of behaviours to avoid, I remember 15, 16 years ago when I was getting my first mortgage, it was things like not making cash withdrawals late at night at the weekends. What's the modern equivalent of that?
I think so some of the myths that are out there, we won't overanalyze the bank statements to the extent of that. One of the things that was out a couple of years ago was that your average millennial we'd be scrutinising to see how much they spent on avocados and cappuccinos. It's not that bad, it really isn't.
Well, actually, I recommend everybody take a look at how much they're spending on cappuccinos. There's probably a savings there to be made. But what are the big no-nos? We read a lot about online gambling. Yeah.
So there's a difference, I suppose, between, so when we talk about something like online gambling, the difference between somebody putting €10 on at Cheltenham, or the occasional bet, that's absolutely fine. What you don't want to see is a pattern of any sort of dysfunction in it. In terms of the rest of it, of the bank statement piece, we need to see that you can afford the repayment. So, and that might sound very simplistic, but we want to see, so sometimes you can get people coming in and they want to go from a point where maybe they've been saving a very small amount, and then the mortgage they've taken on is quite substantial. So either
but what if they've been paying rent at the same time? And does that count towards
and
it?
This is absolutely a key part of it. The rental, and we're in South Dublin, so this is something that's crucial. A lot of our customers are paying really high rents, and that proves repayment capacity. So one of the things to make sure on your bank statements is that we can clearly see your rent going out.
But rent going out, if they've managed to amass savings sufficient for a 10% deposit for first-time buyers or 20% for other buyers, if they've managed to amass that in savings while paying South Dublin rents,
that is phenomenal.
They're definitely showing well capacity.
Exactly, and the likelihood is that if they are renting in South Dublin, they have repayment capacity. That the mortgage repayment tends to be less than what they're paying in rental income.
And that doesn't surprise me at all. We're hearing a lot as well about first-time buyers returning to their family homes for a period of maybe a year or 6 months or whatever it is, in order to save. Have you any data on this? Can you see how many of your applications, or what proportion of your applications for first-time buyers are actually coming from people who are not renting?
Yeah,
or not paying rent, whether they're staying with a family member or something like that.
Without putting a percentage on it, we can definitely see a pattern of it.
So it is happening.
And what it tends to be is, you might have somebody who has proven the repayment capacity through the rent, but is struggling to make the 10%. And we can see that the repayment capacity is there, and that they manage their finances very, very well. And in order to actually accumulate the 10% deposit part of it, they need to move home for a period of time to get to a point where they can go on the mortgage journey.
Is that somebody that you might consider then, say, for these coveted exemptions?
Yes, well, our criteria actually on exemptions are relatively clear-cut. So we focus on the net disposable income that each customer has. So I suppose we look at their income, and with their income we will take in their basic income. We take a percentage of bonus. In some cases we'll take a percentage of overtime if it's proven and consistent. So we look at that on one side of the page, and essentially on the other side of the page it is their mortgage repayment. We'll stress it just to make sure that if mortgage rates went up, that they still have that affordability.
What is the figure that you're stress testing to now?
So we will generally add 2% to the existing mortgage repayment. So it just allows for that little bit of leeway that if rates went up, that somebody is still able to afford it.
And of course rates are going in the opposite direction.
We are absolutely in a very benign interest rate environment at the moment, so it shouldn't be of major concern. But I suppose this is also a 25 or 30 year commitment for people, so it gives us that bit of comfort. Also on that side of the page then we were looking at if they have personal loans or a regular credit card repayment, we'll need to factor that in. And ultimately that will arrive then at a net disposable income figure. If that income figure is high, that shows that they have capacity to take on more than 3.5 times their income. And that's probably eliminates a lot of the mystery in that essentially for exceptions, we and all the other banks are giving those exceptions to people that have the affordability for it.
Okay. Last year, one of the things we covered on the show here last year was that I think by March or April, Charlie Weston, The Independent, ran a piece to say that the exemptions for the entire year had been used up. And that was in March or April. And then, maybe in September we had a mortgage broker in here saying, no, still exemptions available. So what is the situation? I mean, can you look back on 2019 and say AIB as a bank used all the exemptions available to it?
We did. And I suppose one of our challenges internally is always to make sure that those exemptions are spread out over the year in the right way, and we don't ever hit a point where in March we don't have any.
But is there a situation, because approval in principles, I mean, they're running up, 6 months now?
Well, we do 12 months.
Up to 12 months.
So
can somebody lock in an exemption for 12 months and not use it?
They can. So if you have an exception, and not all banks are the same, but with us, we've taken the view that, first of all, we were 6 months for an approval, but I think what has happened, it's taken people longer to find a home, and that kind of links into the supply challenge that we have. And for a customer starting off, to put them on a clock of 6 months, it felt unfair. So we widened that to 12 months. It gives them a reasonable amount of time. The other thing is they hold that exception for the 12-month duration. The positives of that is it allows them that time and space. The negatives, as you've rightly hinted at there, it does lock in that on our books for the full 12 months.
If they don't use it, if they go with another mortgage or...
Yeah, no, we would check in with them on a fairly regular basis to make sure that they haven't, if they've gone elsewhere, then
it comes back.
That comes back to us, yeah.
Okay, so look, I suppose in terms of the rates, where are we at the moment for fixed rates?
So we're in a quite a low interest rate environment at the moment.
Typical first-time buyer mortgage.
Typical first-time buyer mortgage for us. We offer actually our kind of latest good news is we've launched before Christmas a green mortgage at 2.5% for a 5-year fixed term.
I was reading about this. Can you actually explain what exactly that is, or what's the criteria?
Yeah, so the criteria are relatively straightforward. So the applies to both existing customers but also our new customers. And the customer needs to just produce for us the BER cert, the energy rating, that the energy rating for that home is B3 or above. So it kind of fits with AIB's overall sustainability agenda. But what we're finding as well is for a lot of first-time buyers, it's particularly useful because if they're buying new homes, almost every new home that's been built over the last few years will absolutely fly through that criteria. So it's something we're getting a huge amount of interest in.
And that rate again is?
2.5.
Okay, and how does that compare with your fixed and variable rates at the moment?
So the rest of our fixed rates are kind of 2.85, 3.15. At variable, we'll go down to 2.75 depending on your loan to value.
Okay, that's an interesting one. So earlier today, I was having a conversation with an estate agency that, is a hybrid offering online and traditional. And two of the issues that they have at the moment in terms of digitizing the whole process of buying and selling property, one is certainly the conveyancing and the slow adoption of digital technology to innovate and speed up the conveyancing process. The other was around the mortgages, because we've seen such a huge progress made on the fintech side in Ireland. We have amazing technology here, and it's not all being used. So where is AIB? Perhaps an unfair question, but what can you tell us about adoption rates of technology within?
So again, and this is a reaction to customer behaviour as well, and customer feedback is we've changed the way we're doing business in terms of the face-to-face meeting. Initially, what we're trying to do as much of is, and this is quite, I suppose, it's a bit of a bank word, do as much omni-channel business, in the sense that there are customers that want to do part of their mortgage journey face to face and meet us, but actually they want to be able to track the mortgage online. They want to be able to upload their documentation at home. They want to be able to check some of the detail online. So what we've done, actually, we've introduced it's called our Mortgage Express offering. So at the moment we're looking at about 6-7 out of 10 customers can go on this journey. We can give them an approval at the first meeting, subject to having certain documentation, and it holds as every other approval does for 12 months. But then from that point onwards, as well as the person they were dealing with initially, they can upload documentation. They track it on an app. They have a question and answer feature on it. So it probably... The
question and answer feature, is that... do you use chatbots
so they're supported by our own in-house team that will that'll contact them through the app. So what it does is, I suppose, it gives us, from our perspective, it probably meets that customer need of the modern customer in their 20s and 30s. A lot of their day-to-day dealings are on a smartphone.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily want to trail into a branch every time they want
to
talk to us.
They don't even want to pick up a phone. I mean, we're talking about an on-demand generation. They expect information on demand. But actually that speeds up everything, because it works both ways. It means that consumers are making fast decisions about what mortgage product they're going to use. You know, they're making fast decisions too. And I think that if we're going to increase efficiency around property and property transactions, it has to be the full chain.
It does, and I think what we're finding is, I don't think you could have the whole mortgage journey done through the app. I think customers are saying to us, it's nice to have you guys there to talk to face and to ask some of the initial questions, but really once we've the initial meeting done, we're happy enough to use the technology after that. So it's great to be able to blend the two, and I think that's probably the future for all aspects of the property chain. Legal and estate agent.
Actually, I wasn't aware of that technology coming out, but actually that's great to see. So we might look into that and have a further discussion about that at another time in a PropTech context. So before we let you go, have you any final advice for home buyers, whether they're first-time buyers or those trading up or down over the next couple of months?
Come and talk. I think it is as simple as that. I think there's lots of information out there. Nothing beats sitting down and chatting through your own individual circumstances. And you know, we're happy to talk to you and answer any questions you have.
That's great, Barry. Thank you so much for being with us today. That was Barry Cull, Head of Homes in South Dublin for AIB. After the break, we'll be joined by David Rouse, Multi-Units Development Advisor for the Housing Agency. Stay tuned.